On today's episode, we're going to take the latest web design trends. We're going to break them down. I'll tell you what I think about them. Are they good? Are they bad? Should you use them? Let's rock and roll. Hey designer friends, what is up? My name is Ron Sego. Welcome back to Flux. And today let's talk about web design trends. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with them. I hate them because I feel like sometimes everybody's doing the same thing. The web starts to always look the same, and it's kind of boring. And then in the next year, all your designs look like they're out of date because you were just using something trendy. And it wasn't a good design choice. That being said, we always have to stay on top of things, because that's our culture. We design for culture. We need to know how people are going to perceive it, and people are aware of the trends, and so we have to be aware of them. We have to understand when they're a right fit for us or not. Let's start to break them down. First trend I want to talk about is the color palette choices, which is becoming pretty popular, which is a triadic color palette. You can see it in this website, for example, and by triadic meaning there's three colors that are kind of like equally spaced out. In this case, it's the yellow, red, and blue. It creates a very kind of like contrasting and poppy experience. And I think, look, this is, of course, it's very personal whether you like this or not, but I think it's very kind of Gen Z, and it's really, if you're into this thing, then you're into this thing, but it's definitely not appropriate for any client. But if you do need something that's very poppy, that's very lively and stuff like that, and probably very young, then these kinds of triadic palettes might be the right thing for you. Definitely not for all clients. The next thing is this Glassmorphism, this whole glassiness, blurry thing, and you probably have seen this all the time. Like all of Dribbble is full with all of these things. I've even found a Pinterest board here, Glassmorphism. This is a trend that's obviously, it's been started by Apple, since that's how they designed their UI. So they pretty much kind of invented it. And like a lot of things that Apple are doing, it kind of becomes the status quo for what is good design, for what is premium, because Apple is kind of like positioned that way. So now everybody, like this banking example, everybody that wants to look up to date, that wants to look premium, is using these things. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Again, it depends on the context. You have to understand where this is coming from, and then what's the meaning of using this. So right now, this is trending in a sense of everybody understand that if you want to have something that looks premium, that looks Apple-like, you're going to use this thing. But be aware of the fact that it's probably in 1 year, 2 years, when Apple is going to update their iOS UI kit to the next thing that they come up with, your design might not look up to date. But right now, if you're trying to get this kind of like premium look, yeah, that's definitely a way to achieve that. The next thing is this kind of like trend of website that looks like they're editorial. They look like, it's a newspaper that you're reading. I've been seeing this a lot lately, and I've especially been seeing this in websites of designers themselves. This is a website for Pangram. Pangram, it's a typography foundry, but you'll see designers really loving this kind of like editorial kind of look and feel. There's a few things that are going on here that I think are driving this trend. First of all, it's this whole new development in what's even possible in terms of web layout. All of the new CSS grid and all of the new things like this CSS animation. There's a lot of new layout options that are just possible with the development of HTML, CSS, and animation and all of that kind of things that just enable this. And designers, they want to bring in new inspiration, and this time they're bringing it from like offline magazines, because there's a lot of very cool layouts going on there. So I do think that it's cool. You have to remember though that magazines are designed that way to be read in a very specific, there's a very strong correlation between how you're using the format that you're using and the actual design and the layout. So when you're scrolling through papers that way, it makes sense. Some of that layout makes sense. But when you're scrolling and when you have infinite space to scroll through, you have to remember that when you're printing magazines, you have a very limited, every page that you're adding is actually costing some more trees, some more ink, some more, it has a cost to it. So they have to be super, super functional and tight in, for example, putting in a lot of text at the same time. On the web, it's a different format, right? We scroll and we can scroll forever and we can make the page very, very long and it's not gonna add additional cost to it. So is there a reason to put so much text and perhaps even overwhelm you on the screen? I'm not sure. So I think it's pretty cool, especially for designers who like to experiment and who like to show something new in terms of layout. Not sure it's a super, super practical thing to do, but if you're trying to go for that look, that editorial look, which sometimes can evoke the sense of fashion, sometimes can evoke the sense of this is something academic, article-y like, then you can use that. But again, I would always consider from a functional perspective, is this doing a good service? The next thing that I've been seeing a lot, and I've muted this, but let me unmute this for a second, is websites. I'm gonna mute again, but it's websites that are using music and sound in the background. For me, I think there's always kind of like in the history of web design, people try to bring in music and then it's so frustrating, like people hate this, and so this goes down. And now because of, video is coming down, we have a larger bandwidth, and so we have full-on videos like we have right here, then people bring the voice back. My personal feeling is it's super, super intrusive. I usually have my own music playing in the background from my Spotify, so I don't want you to overwhelm me with some more, music, at least without getting my permission. There are some websites who are doing it nicely by saying, hey, you're gonna need sound for the next experience, so make sure that you're set up the right way. But when a website like this, when they're just throwing full-on music into your computer, to me that's still annoying. So I foresee this trend as going to disappear soon. But yeah, it is what it is. All right, the next thing that we have is websites that are actually adding grain and noise here to actually kind of like ruin the quality of the images and what they're showing you here, just to look a little bit more old school or rough around the edges. And I think, this is, again, trends are a lot of times they're going in cycles, and I think that every time that we have new quality standards, now we have super HD, 4K, everything looks super, super sharp and nice and slick, people will have kind of a reaction against it where they will feel like back in the day, things were more authentic, right? It was a little bit more grainy, it was a little bit more crappy, and that was more authentic. So now, if you want to convey that authenticity, you actually have to ruin your whole design with grain and noise and that kind of thing. So I'm seeing it coming back. In general, I would look and I would say, why did you bring this low quality images here? But I think they're actually trying to do this on purpose to communicate that sense of authenticity here. The next trend is this weird multicolor gradients that, I don't know, I don't think they've been popularized by Stripe because a lot of people are doing this right now. As you can see, Stripe is combining the gradients with the Glassmorphism thing. But I have to say, just personally, I don't know, I love these gradients aesthetics. I just think they're beautiful and I'm a sucker for it. So I don't know is this a short-term trend or a long-term trend. I can't see this as a long-term trend. I think this is just like a current aesthetic. I think I'm like a sucker for this aesthetic. I love it. So you might see me using this, but I don't think this is like something that's going to stay with us for a while. It's trending right now. Again, I think this is something with, I don't know if there's new technology that allows for this. You could do gradient mesh with, Illustrator for years now, but it just looks cool and I love it, and I love that it's coming to the web right now. The last trend that I want to show you is this kind of like very hard geometric grids, and there's a lot of websites that are now using them. I feel like this is kind of like a different play on the same trend that we were discussing earlier with, you know, the magazine layouts. And I just think this is just an implementation of the new CSS grid capabilities that are now available. You know, previously, really back in the day, back when I started getting into web design, if you wanted to create something like this, you would have to create tables. So there was a row, and I mean, that was just like, that was a hell to create something like this. And then people didn't want to do this and they moved away from that aesthetic. But now with the new CSS grid feature that really makes creating these types of grids super, super easy, it's coming back. And I actually think a lot of times it's cool and nice. Sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming because, as I've said previously, perhaps it's not such a good idea to put up so much content in front of you, but it is pretty cool, and it is kind of things that I think will stay with us just because the technology now enables this and makes it pretty easy. So people are going to find useful ways to create these types of grid and make it useful. All right, those are all the trends that we have for you today. Let me know if I've missed any of the trends that you like. Let me know in the comment below. Let me know what you think about these videos. In general, give it a like if you like this, so YouTube will give you some more great videos from us, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.